Hey everyone, and welcome to The White Flag, a podcast about what it looks like to adopt a posture of surrender in your walk with Jesus amidst our hurried, manic, control-obsessed world. I'm your host, Jonathan Moynihan, coming to you from right outside of Baltimore, Maryland, and we're back at it again this week, once again, after coming out of Thanksgiving break. And today, I want to help you take a few minutes to pause and actually just think critically about your rhythms as we approach the Christmas season. I've titled this episode, How to Unhurry for the Holidays, and my goal is to hopefully convince you that there are some things you can do to make this Christmas with your family and with your friends actually be the type of Christmas we all long for. The type of Christmas we all sing about and there's carols about and we see in movies, but we almost never actually live out. Because when you think about it, every year we turn on Christmas music. Some of you turn it on before Thanksgiving, and you should repent of that because that's just wrong. But most of us do find ourselves listening to Christmas music this time of year throughout the month of December. And when you do that, it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy and nostalgic and just kind of makes you long for just those wonderful, hard to articulate moments that make Christmas Christmas for those of us that have positive memories with this holiday and positive memories with our family. I don't want to pretend that that's the case for everybody, but I know on the whole, Christmas is a messy time with family, but it can also be a very light, wonderful time. But we hear Christmas carols and songs, and we hear phrases like, may your days be merry and bright, and let your heart be light, and, now all our troubles are out of sight, stuff like that. And I mean, even my all-time favorite Christmas song, not, Jesus Christmas song like Silent Night or Oh Holy Night, but my favorite all-time sort of secular Christmas song is The Christmas Song by Nat King Cole. And it's chestnuts roasting on the open fire, Jack Frost nibbling at your nose. There's a peace and a pause to the season that kind of just emanates from these songs that we get to hear in culture. And when I hear really good Christmas music or a really sort of warm and fuzzy Christmas moment or Christmas movie, it just makes me want to take a deep breath and pour some hot apple cider, add a little bit of bullet bourbon in it, and just take a deep inhale and exhale and just slow down a little bit. And that's what I want Christmas to be. I think that's what a lot of us want Christmas to be. The problem is we sing and listen to Christmas songs, but the way Christmas manifests in our lives is a lot more like the McAllister family in Home Alone streaking through the airport where they're juggling all the demands of work and life and family and tradition and pressure and church and everything, and it gets to the point where inevitably we feel like the McAllisters where we either forget someone or something and we're just in a mad sprint to get to Christmas, and then inevitably you realize you forgot something and you're like, Kevin! All right, honestly, most of us aren't forgetting people at the airport, so I'm obviously being a little hyperbolic here. But for many of us, Christmas isn't a time of peace and joy and reflection. Our Christmas experience in 2021 is not like the songs that we listen to. It's almost like the songs give us this facade of comfort and rest and thoughtfulness, but the truth is we hurry our way through the Christmas season. The holidays are, like I said, nothing but a mad sprint to the finish line of consumerism and traffic and panic and tracking online orders and hurrying our way through the very time of year that we should probably slow down to be present the most with the ones we love. So, to help you unhurry for the holidays, I want to share with you something that John Mark Comer came up with a few years ago that, to be honest, I did not model well the first 2 years after I was exposed to it. But this year, my wife and I have adopted a fresh vision and passion for unhurrying for the holidays, and I think it could really help you, as it is slowly helping me and her, tap into the spiritual power and presence of God in this incredibly important season as we sort of prepare ourselves to celebrate the gift of Jesus. So today, again, building off of John Mark's original idea, I want to help you unhurry for the holidays. And these are going to be 7 ideas that are all from John Mark. And they're not legalistic rules or things that make you uber spiritual or more holy. They're just ideas of how to unhurry your life in this season where our already frenetic culture tends to ramp things up to an explosive and destructive pace. So the goal here is to slow down a little bit, be more present, to experience the presence of God more, and really pay attention to the inner life of your soul as you get ready to celebrate, like I said, the gift of Jesus. And so, as John Mark pointed out in the original video he did on this, the goal here isn't that you would necessarily have more enjoyment or have a happier holidays, because we know for some people the holidays are a really difficult time, and we don't want to just paint this wide brush and pretend that, oh yeah, you do these things and you'll be happy. It's more so about ensuring that we are including Jesus as the centerpiece of this annual tradition of centering on the gift of Christ, and really positioning ourselves to be able to give and receive love well with those that we are close to and those we encounter. And we think in that process, it will lead to lasting fulfillment. Maybe not necessarily what the fickle, shallow narratives of Christmas that we get sold, but actually an experience of Christmas that is full of presence, both with God and with other people. So here are the 7 ideas of how to unhurry for the holidays. Number 1, get off social media for 2 to 3 weeks leading up to Christmas. You can pick a day if you want. If you don't want to do a significant period of time, you could pick a day every week, or pick a part of your day every day and kind of go into that. But get off social media for 2 to 3 weeks leading up to it. Or if you're feeling bold, take the whole month and just log off social media. Don't be that person who's like, hey guys, I'm logging off for a while, which is sort of bringing attention to the fact that you're doing this. I would just encourage you to do it. I go into social media quite a bit in episode 11 of the podcast, if you haven't listened to it, entitled, Is Your Phone Hurting Your Faith? Answer, probably yes. But I break down how phones can oftentimes be destructive for our spiritual well-being. But with it being Christmas and this time of year, I think it's a great time to make a commitment to get off social media for a specific amount of time. Social media absolutely can be a tool for inviting people to church, to connecting with old friends. But I think if we're honest, most of us, the vast majority of us, our social media usage is mindless, unproductive, and narcissistic. And I think we would all benefit from sort of this group collective fasting from it in an effort to be more present in the present with the people we love. I had someone point out to me recently even that the idea of whipping your phone out at the dinner table or while you're mid-conversation with somebody, it's no different than if you just brought a magazine out and started reading it at the table in the middle of a discussion. We would never do that. That would be so rude. If you just whipped a book out to read it while someone's talking to you, we'd never do that. And yet that's what we do all the time, largely because we are more focused on the digital currency of likes and reposts and all that stuff than we are the conversation we find ourselves in. And if you're someone who's like, hey, I actually don't have an unhealthy relationship with social media, cool, that's great. I would say prove it. Just get off social for the whole month. And you don't need to see what people get for Christmas. You don't need to see their perfectly curated family pictures where everything looks neat when you know it's chaos in real life. Just take the month off. Or at the very least, take 2 weeks leading up to Christmas and just see how God leverages this small death of self to draw you closer to himself and to those around you. That's number 1. Number 2, set phone-free blocks of time in your day or within certain parts of your day. So this is kind of a play off of the social media angle, but instead of just deleting social, I would encourage you to set phone-free blocks of time, maybe a day a week or certain hours of the day. This is something I'm not very consistent in. I'm very hot and cold when it comes to this, but what's interesting is it's something I very rarely want to do, but when I do it, I am almost always grateful that I did. It's like the opposite of Doritos. I always want to eat Doritos, but when I'm done, I never feel good. It's like this, but inverted when it comes to your phone, because I never really want to just put my phone away in a cupboard so I can read a book to my daughter for the 3rd time in a row, or watch Toy Story 3 for the 50th time, or do horseback rides throughout the kitchen to the point where my back hurts. Honestly, I'd much rather watch YouTube or check sports news or listen to a sermon from a pastor while I kind of passively play with my kids. But I've got plenty of time to engage digital content. I don't have unlimited time with my family. I don't have unlimited time with my friends, especially during this time of year where we get to celebrate community and time together and just the gifts of life. So Idea number 2, set a phone-free block of time, even if it's just 1 day a week or half a day a week or 2 hours every day. I'm confident God will use it for good in your life. Number 3, get shopping done early and do it as quick as possible. Now, this doesn't mean be hurried and frenetic and in a panic trying to shop all in 1 day if you can't. But I think a great way to unhurry for the holidays, as John Mark says, is to be intentional, take a day, and get your shopping done in one swift time slot if you're able to. For years, my wife and I, Stephanie, have been terrible at this. Like, we've even purchased things so late that they come in after New Year's. But this year, we were intentional. We made a plan. We talked to our family. We asked them to send us their list early. And it's been really refreshing to knock out some shopping very early. With online shopping, it's getting easier and easier to do this. And again, the goal isn't to be hurried or to sprint around. It's just to be intentional and to create some margin in your calendar where you can be thoughtful in your shopping. You can be present. You can even think about what you need to do to make someone feel valued by you. And that's why you're getting that gift instead of just looking for the last minute thing that's available on Amazon Prime. That's not really something they want, but at least you'll have something at the party. So number 3, get your shopping done as early and as quickly as possible. Not hurried, but do it all at once. Number 4 is practice the Sabbath with greater intensity. When I say greater intensity, I just mean if you already practice the Sabbath, make it more intentional. And if you're someone who doesn't practice the Sabbath, now is a great time to start. I dove into this in length in episode 9 of the podcast. And for some of you, I think this might be the single best idea to unhurry for the holidays. It's the single best thing for you to adopt the deeply spiritual practice of honoring the Sabbath, taking 1 day a week, devoting it to God, refusing to work, and committing to pausing from the reactive patterns of your life and just delight in God and His gifts and His creation. My family takes a Sabbath on Saturdays right now. And we keep our phones in our bedrooms. We try to do all the dishes and cleaning the night before so we can just rest and relax with our kids. Sometimes on my Sabbath, I'll do extended reading. Sometimes I'll do a longer workout. Sometimes we watch European soccer all morning as a family. But almost every Sabbath, we make a big breakfast. We do like a big coffee pour over for my wife and I with our Chemex. And it's just a day that kind of feels like a vacation day. If you've never taken a Sabbath or really known what to do with it, the 4 key ingredients are prep. You take time to prepare for a day where you're not going to be on email, where you're not going to work, you're not going to run errands, you're just going to exist with your family. It takes work to prepare for that. So that's number 1, you got to prep. Number 2, you have to pause. So just slow down from the manic patterns. Try to stay off social. Try to not do your budgeting or future planning or, strategizing some work thing casually in your head. Just slow down, pause, give the day to God and say, God, the world's going to keep going and I'm trusting you. The Sabbath is a way to prove to God you don't believe you're God. That's one way I've heard it put. So you got to prep, you got to pause. Then you should have a time of prayer and a time of praise. I think Sabbath is a day where you should have an extended time of journaling or prayer or just Bible reading. If you only typically get 5 minutes a day, try to do 15, just as a way of devoting the day to God as a gift. And then the last thing is you got to play. You got to prep, pause, pray, and then play. A big part of Sabbath is just delighting in God and delighting in the gifts that He's given you. So I'd encourage you to do what brings you life. Play golf, make homemade bread, build a huge charcuterie board, go lift weights, go hunt, go smoke a cigar. Do what makes you feel alive and then connect the gift of life back to the giver, because that's all worship is. I've had a mentor tell me that worship is really connecting the gifts of God to the giver, the gifts of life to the giver of life, who is the Father. So honor the Sabbath, practice the Sabbath with greater intensity. My wife and I are even thinking about ways to include our children in this more, like having certain toys they're not allowed to play with except for the Sabbath. So even from a young age, they realize this day is special. There's something different about this day. They don't really understand the concept of why we rest necessarily on this day, because to be honest, every day is a break for them. But yeah, there's some really cool ways you can do that. So to kind of help you with this, we lead into number 5, which is follow an Advent calendar. Some people call this like liturgy, or there could be an app that you use or something from your, childhood little piece of cardboard with little pieces of chocolate inside it for each day. But more than that, just giving out chocolate and saying, we're now 20 days from Christmas. I would encourage you to follow an actual Advent calendar that includes your family or includes you and your friends to navigate the Christmas story as you prepare to celebrate the coming of Jesus and celebrating Christmas. Our church, Mosaic Christian Church, we have an Advent calendar that's available online, mosaicchristian.org/Advent. I'll put that in the show notes. And there's also an Advent calendar for families to include children, so you can break down the tradition of Christmas, the story of Christmas, the beauty of the story, and help kids understand it at their level. But for me, I grew up with an unhealthy relationship with tradition. I just thought it was all boring and dull, so I never really paid attention to Advent. But the older I've become and the more mature I've become, I've come to love this as a spiritual rhythm. Advent, just taking time to follow an Advent calendar includes reading of Scripture, maybe singing a song, lighting a candle, enjoying some chocolate, but really it's just a time to slowly prepare your heart and build anticipation for the day that we celebrate that God came to us to meet us in our mess and reconcile us of our own sin so we could be united to Him in an eternal relationship and escape separation from Him. And so I'll put the Mosaic link in the show notes if you don't have access to an Advent calendar. And to be honest, of the 7, if you just choose to honor the Sabbath and then do the Advent calendar, I'm confident you are going to unhurry for the holidays. And I even think in that process, you're going to start to have the courage and the commitment to even take on some more of these ideas. But man, I could not encourage enough. Follow an Advent calendar. Do it with your family. Do it for your own heart. Let it be a guide as you try to figure out what should I be reading and reflecting on as I spend time with God this month. Go ahead and do it. That's number 5. So number 6, lean into tradition. I think, like I said, I used to kind of be repulsed by tradition, thinking if it isn't new, it isn't good. And now, obviously, I understand the irony that I basically just talk about doing old spiritual practices now for a podcast. But I think tradition helps us slow down because typically when we look to things back in the day, like things that come from tradition, things back in the day tended to be slower than they are today. And I think leaning into the tradition of like soaking up old Christmas music while just staring at a tree and sipping some hot cider with the lights off and a few candles on, like that sounds beautiful to me. Like almost pretending, okay, what if we pretend like we don't have electricity today and just fall back into like an old traditional practice of what maybe your parents or your grandparents did this time of year. That would, I think that just brings a lot of good things to our soul and slows us down. I think leaning into the tradition of like watching specific Christmas movies with your family could be a really fun practice. Or, choosing to do stockings the day before, or wrapping Christmas presents a certain day, or putting on Elf while you make cookies. Like all of these little family traditions tend to take up more of your attention than if you're just kind of reactively living, coming home, watching sports, watching the news, stuff like that. I think soaking up Christmas with all the little things, like going into Baltimore and looking up the neighborhood in Hamden, I think it is, I forget, that has all the Christmas lights. But there's just little fun things that you can do. There's probably neighborhoods in your town, no matter where you are listening from, where you could just go follow a family tradition that you did as a kid. It'll just take you back to a nostalgic place, and I think that's powerful. I think another unique way to lean into tradition is to get around older people and ask them to share their memories of Christmas with you. I find it to be really interesting when you get to break down the experiences of others, and as they discuss them, it almost invites you into that memory a little bit. And so if you have a grandparent or an older aunt or uncle, or even just your parents if they're older, or a neighbor who's older, I'd encourage you just to, in your relationships with them, sit down and have a deeply human connection about their memories and their traditions, and think about what are some ways that you could start traditions for your family now that could be a way to protest against the hurried state we live in and just really appreciate this time of year. So that's number 6, lean into tradition. And number 7, last one, this idea of making the act of presence and celebration a spiritual discipline. Make the act of presence and celebration a spiritual discipline. Most of the time, especially in America, we kind of view things like fun and being present and enjoyment. These are just things that like naturally happen around us when we are in a good environment. But I think we have a chance this Christmas, leading up to the end of the year and Christmas 2021, to really shift the way we look at being present and how we celebrate, and viewing it almost as like a discipline to choose. It's something that we choose to pursue. What this idea really gets down to is making a conscious choice to be intentional with your state of your own soul and your own state of mind as you step into social environments. We tend to have a lot of Christmas parties, family get-togethers, all that stuff. And I think if we view being present and choosing to have a posture of celebration leading up to Christmas, that's going to mean you take a few breaths in your car before getting out to enter into a social environment, and just with those breaths, inviting the presence of God into your life and inviting Him to help you have a posture of celebration, even if you have family dysfunction. Because the gift of Jesus is true for all people, no matter how broken our homes are. This posture of making presence and celebration a spiritual discipline could mean that you just choose going into an interaction that you're going to be very intentional about eye contact. That you're going to step into a room and you are choosing to be seen for your full self, and your goal is to make other people feel seen themselves. It could mean choosing to celebrate Christmas, to index your heart so that your standard operating procedure is one of joy and gratitude. It could be doing a gratitude journal this month. It could be that before you go to sleep every day, you write down 3 things that you are thankful for, things that you're hopeful for, whatever. But there's opportunities here where we can live at an extreme to elevate our norm. And I think gratitude should be just flowing from Thanksgiving into Christmas. And I think when we live a really grateful life, we tend to be more present. We tend to be able to celebrate more. And I think as followers of Jesus, as our world culturally and sort of secularly celebrates Christmas, there ought to be something different about the way we carry ourselves, because December 25th is not just a day where people get presents. It's the day where the ultimate gift of the presence of God manifested in flesh through the form of a baby. All of this happened. And so we should live with greater celebration and presence in this time. I think having friends over and baking and watching a movie, all that stuff can be deeply formative to our faith. But the thing that makes it formative is whether or not we step into it with presence and celebration, with thanksgiving overflowing out of these spiritual disciplines. So that's really what I want to encourage us to do. That out of just the paying attention to the inner life, you're actually going to have a healthier external reality. And that's what unhurrying for the holidays is really about. It's about paying attention to the inner life of the soul, what God wants to do this holiday season, pushing back against the sort of culture-forming mechanisms of our secular age to resist the way we are being conformed by the world, and to make this season an offering to God with greater intensity and intentionality than we ever have before. And I think if we're able to do just some of these, you will actually do less this Christmas than years past, but you will experience more from choosing to be present, choosing to unhurry, and choosing to position your life to almost have this posture of preparation as you celebrate the gift of Jesus. So, there you have it, the 7 ideas to unhurry for the holidays. I'll post this in the show notes just as a list so you can keep track of it. I'll also be posting it on social media from time to time throughout this month, I think. Actually, I don't know if I will, because I might just get off social media and listen to my own advice. But I will post it at least once so you can take a screenshot. If you don't follow me on Instagram, you can do that now at jonathan.moynihan, or you can contact me at my website, jonathanmoynihan.com. All that will be in the show notes. But man, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you give some of these at least a go, and I would love to hear the power and presence of God and how He's moving in your life as you try to adopt some of these new and fresh ways to prepare your heart to celebrate with your friends and family this year. Grace and peace to you. Hope you are well, and I will talk to you all next week.